vote up there. Just on your way, are you? I am, yep.
I'm going to fight. I know you're going to fight. Tomorrow is going to be a great day. Thank you.
Loads of comments from you guys asking, am I being in the chunk? I know who he is at some point. A great pog day. And I've got to tell you, the Big Chungus sends his regards.
Of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy's not popular with you lot. And good morning. Funny, isn't it? Funny, isn't it? Isn't it funny? You know, when I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
Just on your way, are you? I am, yep.
I'm going to fight. I know you're going to fight. Tomorrow is going to be a great day. Thank you.
Don't panic! I think Rishi is panicking. Thank you.
I'm getting loads of comments from you guys asking, am I being chunked? I'm afraid secrecy to the content. I know who he is at some point. A great pog day. Well, I've got to tell you, the Big Chungus sends his regards.
Of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy's not popular with you lot. And good morning. Funny, isn't it? Funny, isn't it? Isn't it funny? You know, when I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a
Just on your way, I am, yeah.
I'm going to fight. I know you're going to fight. Tomorrow is going to be a great day. Thank you.
Big. Just more weight.
Hello. Right. As always, this wouldn't be my stream if there wasn't a myriad of problems. So let's start to work through these as we just wait for the exit poll. Exit poll has dropped. Okay. So first of all, can people hear me? Do we have the obligatory sound audio issue? As I try and figure out how not to be a complete fucking retard. We here. Okay, so just as I try to myriad my way around OBS once again, exit poll has dropped. So the official BBC Sky News exit poll has dropped within the last couple minutes. It projects 13 seats for Nigel Farage and Reform, 2 seats for the Green, 131 seats for the Tories, which is almost complete collapse in their vote, but not as far as was expected. 410 seats for Labour, so Labour have a very sizable majority, 61 seats for the Lib Dems, and 10 seats for the SNP. So Scottish nationalists have completely collapsed. The Tory vote has completely collapsed. Labour has skyrocketed. The Lib Dems have done very well, but of course, I'm sure everyone who is listening to this, high pitch echoing very badly, of course, because it always happens. Let me turn down the echo. I'm pretty quiet. Let me know if that is echo, no echo. People saying there's echo. There is no, I apologize, there is no stuff on the screen because OBS is right. I tell you what, I'm just going to delete that and we'll just start a new screen capture. You'll have it on that screen. Now see the arrow, echo is gone. Okay. Now why is OBS just showing us a fraction of the screen? We don't want to but this would not be one of my streams if there wasn't a complete myriad of boomerisms. So just as I try and relearn OBS, yeah, there's a, is it showing the entire flag or is it just showing 1/4 of the flag? Because that's what's showing up for me. But just as I try and boomer my way around learning OBS once again, because I haven't streamed in a while, just let you know, so it's kind of going to be me a bit, just bare walls kind of reverb in the room. Is that still ongoing now? Hopefully it should be fixed now. So the way this stream's going to work is it's going to kind of be me soloing for first couple hours. So as the counts start to get underway, it's going to just 1/4. I expected as much. So I'm going to solo for first couple hours. I might bring in a couple of people. We might have an open mic session. You are going to have Telegram though to jump in that if I decide to do it. Round about midnight, 1 o'clock UK time, which is whenever we should start to hear. That's whenever we should start to get a lot of declarations on a lot of seats. That's whenever they should start to be coming in thick and fast. That's whenever Felix should be joining me. Felix is currently back in Tokyo at the moment, so he's working on Japanese time. So he'll be getting up pretty early in the morning Tokyo time to join the stream. And then me and him will meander around this. So we'll cover, of course, the big story is the British elections, which have just ended. And it looks like Labour is on course for the majority. But it looks like Reform, which is the party I'm sure we're all here to shill for, is going to smash it out of the park with 13 seats, which is, in terms of the electoral system in the UK, and in terms of the history of like UKIP electorally, is like massive result. This is, if that turns out to be 13, even if it just turns out 5 reforms, even if Nigel is the only Reform MP to get into Parliament, that is a massive breakthrough, because people who don't know their history, the biggest problems for Nigel Farage electorally domestically in the UK was the first past the post electoral system. But now that looks like that sort of containment vessel has completely collapsed, and now Reform is going to have a whole selection of MPs going to Parliament, which is going to be massive, because it's one thing to have like, whenever we're still in the EU, have MEPs, assembly members in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland hold councils. Domestically, politically in the UK, it didn't really mean much unless you can elect MPs to go to Westminster, even if they sit in opposition. You don't really have a lot of influence politically in British politics in terms of like trying to build up the base. So if the exit poll turns out to be correct, massive, absolutely stonking result for Reform. I'm ecstatic if this is what comes to pass. So as I try and boomer my way, I think OBS has had an update since I last streamed, because the usual button that I clicked, resize output source size, because the usual button I clicked to reset stuff is not here. It's gone somewhere. I don't know where. And it's not allowing me to adjust the why is this? So, so there used to be a button where I could just right-click right onto it and then just say scale to fit frame, and it would just scale on OBS to fit my screen that I was capturing, but that button seems to no longer be there, and I don't know why. So while I continue to boomer my way around this, especially whenever Felix joins us, we'll be discussing developments in France. For particularly, I would imagine, North American viewers who are not aware, Western Europe's undergoing sort of a flurry of elections this summer. We've had the European elections last month, which saw the rise of right-wing nationalist populist parties. Of particular note was the National Rally, which the old Front National in France, Marine Le Pen's party, which caused Emmanuel Macron to dissolve the National Assembly and call legislational elections. So this is like your Congress in the United States, because the French Republic is politically very similar to the United States constitutionally. So Emmanuel Macron, who holds the presidency, dissolved the French National Assembly, hoping to sort of head off the Marine Le Pen's nationalist party. And the first round, because the French have them in double round elections in a lot of these seats, the first round, the National Rally came first with around about 34% of the vote. And then a lot of seats where candidates in the French political system, like I say, it's very much a double voting system. So whenever there's an election, if a candidate doesn't secure 50% of the vote, it then goes off to runoff elections. This is very famous in French presidential elections. This also happens in their National Assembly elections. This is something infamously that the Front National and National Rally, this has always been like the hurdle that they cannot get over. This time it seems to have smashed that. So this Sunday coming, we have the runoff elections for the National Assembly in France, where they essentially a grand coalition of far left parties and Emmanuel Macron's liberals and your sort of conservative Republican conservatives in France are looking to form a grand coalition to keep out Marine Le Pen's nationalists. So that's going to happen this Sunday. The first round of those elections was last Sunday. In between this, we have the British elections, which were today. And so there's quite a lot of electoral stuff going on across Western Europe at the moment. For people who are not familiar, probably some of Felix's guests or some other people who are jumped in. Most of what I do online is I focus on Ukraine. I'm not really going to talk much about Ukraine and Russia in this stream, but I will touch on it at points whenever it becomes relevant, because these elections, it's happened in Europe, in France particularly, and to a degree in the United Kingdom, will have potentially some pretty large effects on the events that are happening in Ukraine, the conflict there. And of course, the biggest election rapidly coming down the road is the US presidential election in November, which I'd imagine whenever Felix joins in a couple hours, we'll probably get pretty deep into the prospects of Trump, Biden, and the ramifications of that. So that's kind of how this stream is going to go. There will be a lot of Twitter. If I can fix this bloody screen, there will be a very significant amount of sort of Twitter scrolling, because that's where all the news are going to be. We are going to be getting from the evening. So so just having a quick scroll here. So I'll go into why this is pretty rich of them to do so, but there are Tory MPs, particularly, talk about the DUP. Don't worry, I'm actually resident in Northern Ireland. I actually couldn't vote for reform because there was no TUV reform candidate standing where I vote. But I will do a spiel covering Northern Ireland and the intricacies of politics in Ulster as the night goes on. But just so this is from Steve Eddington, a very good young journalist, definitely one of our guys, is saying that Tory wets, a wet is like a moderate, it's like a liberal conservative. So for people who are not aware, we're probably going to be going through quite a lot of like British jargon, slang and nomenclature. So in British politics, a wet and a dry, these are very much like always referred to like conservative politicians and to right-wing politicians in the UK. A wet they famously come from Margaret Thatcher. She was the one who coined these terms. So a dry is like I don't want to say a hard line, but you know, he's pretty staunch conservative, pretty staunch right-winger. He's pretty reliable to maintain like a principled conservative right-wing position. Tory wet is like a liberal. It's like a conservative. I guess in America you'd call them a rhino. So whenever that term comes up, I'll probably use it a couple of times through the stream and not remember to clarify myself. So just for people who are not aware of it, whenever it comes up, a dry, whenever I talk about a dry conservative, that is like a right winger, a proper right wing conservative. And then a wet conservative is like a liberal centrist. This election has very much been about destroying the Conservative Party. For those of you who've paid attention, the whole 0 seats, the reason why we all really jumped behind reform is because the Conservative Party is very much a conservative party. It was elected in 2019 under Boris Johnson, and it was portrayed, and it was portraying itself as sort of like this. Nationalist is far too strong of a word, because right-wing nationalism doesn't really fly in Britain for various cultural reasons. But the Conservatives under Boris Johnson, whenever they were elected in 2019, were portraying themselves as like this sort of populist right party. They were going to bring down immigration. They were going to reform the country. They were going to shake things up. Through the pandemic and since then, it's been shown that was just it was a lie. The Conservatives who've governed in a very left-wing manner. Immigration is completely out of control. Not going to go too much into the coronavirus stuff because I am on YouTube and I'm not too sure on what the policy is around there, but insane levels of lockdown and restrictions came in through lockdown. I don't really care about it because I thought lockdown was a load of bullshit and the coronavirus stuff was, I'm sure you can sort of get where I'm leaning on this equation. But the country was locked down, but at the same time, while they were locking everyone down, Boris Johnson and senior Conservatives were having parties at Downing Street. They were having get-togethers. The Labour Party did it too, but you had this political class that was effectively disobeying the same rules that they were affecting on the rest of us. Then they got rid of Boris Johnson for that there. You had in Liz Truss, who tried to bring in a fairly revolutionary budget. Didn't really last long for various reasons. And then you had Rishi Sunak, who's just been a complete disaster. So this election, from those of us on the right, has just been about punishing the Conservatives. The zero seats campaign. Every Tory must lose their seat. This is kind of what we were aiming towards. It really got underway because whenever the Prime Minister announced the election, it was there was no energy in the campaign. The campaign was pretty dead. The Reform Party was led by a man called Richard Tice, who, don't worry, we will be talking a lot about that individual. See, I'm doing so well at meandering through the spiel, I've forgotten to try and fix this screen. But we will be talking a lot about Richard Tice. Preview scaling. Scale the window. That is not the window I want. See, why is there a... Richard Tice is like a bit of a conservative, but not really. It's hard to explain Richard Tice, but we'll attempt it throughout the evening. Oh, I'm just meandering through these. Okay, we might have something here. Not particularly keen on the proportions of this. Okay, I'm looking at the preview. So I think we've got a bit of something on the screen, which is better than it was. So I guess with this, we'll just head straight over and start dicking about on Twitter, because this is where a lot of this is going to happen. Now, can I... Right, how is the visual for you guys? Have we actually got something on screen now? It isn't just a quarter of a... In fact, could I do that? How would that work? No. Conservatives, Labours, Lib Dems mainly. So what were British options to vote? It very much depends where you are in the UK. So in the UK, so in England, England's kind of like the default, because that's where the vast majority of the electorate and the country and population reside. Let's get rid of you. Yep. So in England, what is kind of like your default election choices. So what you have there is, in the vast majority of seats in England, is you'll have either Labour or Conservative. Conservative is also known by Tory. That's kind of what the two default bi-party dynamic is in England. In a number of seats, you'll also have the Liberal Democrats, which are like the centre-left, quote-unquote centre-left liberals, whereas the Labour Party is very much your sort of social democratic, soft socialist kind of party. The Liberal Democrats are sort of like your socially liberal, economically liberal kind of party, which is another sort of like ads will run for some viewers. Skip ads. We don't want to bombard my beloved viewers with ads. So you'll that's kind of what the dynamic is in England. So most seats, Labour and Tory are the two parties really in contention. It in the south and other parts of the country, it might be like Conservative and Lib Dem. So Lib Dem and Labour are basically your left-wing parties, from your centre-left to your more left-wing party. In certain very niche parts of the country in England, you'll also have the Green Party. I'm sure Greens are insane no matter where you are. Pro insane transgenderism, pro mass migration, just, you know, the typical stuff that Green parties are known across the world to support. There will be a couple of seats where the Greens are in contention. They held a seat in Brighton and Hove. They're talking very strongly about picking up a seat from the Conservatives in Norfolk, a seat from Labour in Bristol Central, I believe it is. So, and then where we're paying attention are going for the Reform Party is a couple of seats on the south coast, potentially down into Devon, into Dorset and Cornwall, but particularly up around Lincolnshire. That's where your Conservative Party seats are under very strong attack by the Reform Party. That is where the Reform Party is hopefully going to be picking up some of these projected 13 seats. And of course, in Essex, along the estuary coming out of London, I'll bring up an electoral map to show you guys. I just would rather prefer... Again, I don't know why this is canvas. Is that a bit bigger? Right, well, I'll take it up the canvas. Just going to see... Sorry if there's some playback here. See, that screen still isn't as big as I'd like it to be. And I have no idea why OBS is doing this to me. Display capture. No, I don't want to do a scale filtering. What options have we got? Browser, display capture. Okay, I think I might have it now. So if I just adjust size, and I think we might have something we can work with here. Now it looks to be the same. Why is it doing this to me? Right, well, like, I'll just jump into it. We will see how we go. So, Labour landslide projected. Now, if I can just bring up a map, I should know this off the top of my head. Let me just find a... Does Britain Elects have a decent map? So there you go. That is the exit poll for what we are projected. I'm just going to quickly grab a can of Coke and I'll leave that on screen just a second for you guys to have a gander at. So it is 600 seats in the parliament because it used to be 650, but parliament was actually reduced by 50 seats in the previous one as part of electoral reform, which increased the constituencies. So there are essentially you need 300 seats for a majority, whereas it was around about 325 in the previous election. Now, you just have a look if I can find. In fact, no, Survation should actually have a pretty good map that I can play about with. this. So, there is a pretty big discrepancy. So, what the really respected pollster, the UK, the one that's usually often the closest, is a group called Survation. And this is what they projected today. So there's actually a pretty big discrepancy between the Survation poll and the BBC media election poll. So that is what we're going to see. This is going to be a night to see what so this is going to be a big night for the pollsters to determine which party is which pollster actually has their money on the prize, because there's a pretty big discrepancy between them. So Survation map. Does anyone have a handy link to Survation's election map? And I'll bring, in fact, no, have I got it? There's MMRP. Right, you're showing me a picture of the map, but you're not letting me actually click on it. Okay, here we go. Right, so anyone who's sort of a regular viewer of mine, I'm sure you will know I'm a map artist. We love maps, and election streams make it no difference. We are going to have a little bit of a look at a map. So for people who are asking me, obviously this is the United Kingdom. Frustratingly, it's not covering Northern Ireland at the moment, but so obviously this is England. As you can see, a lot of red and a lot of blue. Labour being red, Conservative being blue, Lib Dems being orange. That's what will make up the bulk of England. And then here you can see a couple of green projected seats. This is what the Survation poll is projecting. This isn't actually what it's going to turn out as. This light blue, which hopefully you can sort of make out on the screen, these are projected Reform seats going by the Survation poll. So so just as we do this, I'll bring up the so we'll just look at, so these were the national results at the 2019 election. So it's a bit different now because there's been by-elections, defections and stuff from parties. But this is what the election results were in 2019. As you can see, a significant amount of blue across all of England, significant parts of Wales, and stretching all the way up into Scotland. So this is what the outgoing parliament, this is what the Conservatives were won in 2019. And this is what the projection is from Survation. As you can see, pretty much complete devastation. Completely losing the entire north of the country. Again, with the caveat, this is Survation poll. It's not going to turn out like this, but this is probably going to be a somewhat general idea of how it's going to turn out. The Tories completely are looking at complete decimation across pretty much all of the north of England. Complete electoral wipeout through Lancashire and Manchester. This is up in this part of the country. Pretty devastating losses through Norfolk and Essex. Again, this is like true blue Conservative territory. Devastation in Kent. Kent has always been a fairly conservative county, apart from Canterbury, but that's because students, as you can see, they're projected to lose it. And then in the West Country, around about Bristol into Cornwall, you're looking at significant Liberal Democrat gains, with some Labour gains as well at the expense of the Conservatives. So pretty much devastating. Probably one of the, depending on what the final results turn out like as the night goes on, complete electoral devastation for the Conservatives. Potentially the worst election for the Tories and the Conservatives since universal suffrage, which came in 1918/1919. Potentially even worse, the 1906. The 1906 or 1902 general election, where the last time the Liberals properly won. If this turns out even like a quarter as bad as this, the Conservatives are finished. They will not be in government for at least a decade. Complete wipeout as well projected, apart from this one, Shropshire's in England. So going by Survation, again, Survation is different from the official media poll, but it looks like a complete Conservative Party wipeout in Wales. As you can see here, the Tories actually did surprisingly well in Wales, taking a lot of the central Wales, some of these northern seats, down here at Gower, pushing right up in towards, that's not Cardiff itself, but these couple of seats below Cardiff and the entire borders, and here just completely loses it all. Surprisingly and rather goodly, probably because boundary changes have changed between some of these constituencies. Survation is only projecting Plaid Cymru, which is the Welsh Nationalist Party. Plaid Cymru are like the SNP in Wales, left-wing, quote-unquote, nationalists, who are basically like the Green Party, but they want an independent Wales. Look like they're going to be relegated to 2 seats, these sort of far western seats. This is where Welsh is widely spoken, where there's a strong Welsh national identity as well. Not too sure, because that's the speaker's seat there in Chorley, so I'm not too sure what this seat is and why it's blocked out. But so this is the Survation poll, and this is Wales. As you can see, pretty much Jacob Rees-Mogg is due to lose his seat, which is there, North East Somerset and Hampton. So it looks like Moggy's going to lose his seat going by this poll. Again, I'm just focusing on the Survation poll at the moment because it has a handy map for me to sort of move around the map and just sort of illustrate and elucidate to people where exactly we're talking. So this is Cornwall, Dorset. This is the West Country down here. This is London here. Around London, you have your home counties, your Buckinghamshire, your Hertfordshires, your Bedfordshires. Down in the south, you have Sussex and Kent. This used to be pretty strong Conservative Party territory. Up here is Norfolk. This seat here is Clacton. This is the big one we're all watching for. This is where Nigel Farage is contesting. By all polls that I've seen, he looks like he is comfortably going to take, but this used to be pretty strong Conservative Party territory. The Tories are holding a fair amount of these Essex seats, but they are projected to lose much of Norfolk. Then you move up here. This is your Lincolnshire. This is where you start to get up to your Midlands. This is your East Midlands. This is another big area where we're looking where reform could start to do very, very well. This is your Boston and Skegnesses, your central Lincolnshires. This is where I believe Richard Tice, who we'll talk about, and your Ben Habibs are standing. As you can see here, it's projecting, where's Ashfield? That is, so that is where Lee Anderson, who was a Conservative Party MP, who defected to Reform, that's his seat there. The polls have been a bit all over the place, saying if he's going to hold his seat or not, but this sort of Lincolnshire area is where we're looking strongly for some very good Reform results. Then we start to move up here to your Derbyshires. This is your Lancashire, Manchester, Liverpool area. A lot of this is like Labour territory. Even Labour at its worst period in government or out in opposition never came close to losing some of these seats. This is your hardcore Labour seats, stuff that will vote Labour till the end of the world kind of territory. But around your sort of Manchesters, moving up here into Lancashire, into your sort of western parts and southern parts of Yorkshire, maybe some parts of Derbyshire, this is where Reform could come very close to getting some very good seconds with the Labour Party, which would then project going into the next election, where Reform could start to take some seats off Labour. This is what is called the Red Wall. I'm sure you don't need explanations of why. Stretching from your Humber and Tyneside to your Middlesbrough over here on the east coast, across to West Lancashire, Liverpool over on the west coast. Just a solid block of Labour seats. In 2019, as you can see here, Boris famously completely dismantled the Red Wall, took a lot of these seats, ousted a lot of very long-standing incumbent Labour MPs, and Rishi, the Conservatives have managed to not only lose that, but completely lose it, probably for a generation, if not more. So a lot of these seats where you had a lot of floating voters, people who would have been very strong traditional Labour, and then went to Boris in the last election. This is prime target. This is fertile ground for future Reform voters. This would have been back whenever UKIP was on its rise in 2014, 2015. This is where, although they never won any of the seats, this is the part of England where the Brexit referendum got across the line. This is where there was a lot of traditional old school Labour voters who are socially conservative, voted UKIP. And then whenever Brexit came along, voted for Brexit. So this is your territory up here. This is kind of where the future of the Reform Party could very well be made at the expense of the Labour Party. Then moving further north up into your Northumbrian, your borders area. As you can see, pretty strong Conservative representation. This is your sort of hardcore coal mining territories up here. This is where the miners strike, especially around here, around Tyneside, in your Northumbria area, Durham areas. These famously flipped to the Tories at the last election, and the Tories are going to lose pretty much every single one. Again, this to me, some of these would be prime location for future Reform inroads if the Tories cannot get their act together. Then we start to move back up north of the border, and this is actually a surprisingly good news for the Conservatives, at least in my estimation. So some of these boundaries have changed, so it isn't the exact seats that are in contention here, but the Tories had 6 seats in Scotland. Here they are projected to hold around about half of them by the Survation poll. Of course, again, the caveat, the Survation is going to be different from the official exit poll, but the exit poll, at least that I've seen so far, doesn't have a map going with it. So historically and famously, after 1997 up until 2015, I don't think the Tories even won one in 2010. The Conservatives had no seats in Scotland. Scotland was a Tory-free zone. So the fact that the Tories are still managing to hold on in free seats, that to me is a pretty good result for the Tories. But the big story about Scotland will be the collapse of the SNP. So in this map, you can see the SNP are this sort of like yellowish tan color. Here they're a very bright yellow color. They're going to lose a lot of the central belt. This is your Edinburgh territory. This is your Glasgow territory. A lot of this, here you've got your Lothians, your East and West Lothian, down into Ayr. A lot of this looks to be going back to Labour, and a couple of Lib Dem seats as well. So it looks like very good news for me as someone who is a British unionist that the SNP are about to be completely decimated in Westminster, which is very good news in a number of ways, because the SNP, anytime their MPs speak in Westminster, it is about the most nauseating, like the Green Party, but in Scotland. Transgender rights, we're not doing enough to help refugees, immigration is too low, why is Scotland always being bullied around by Westminster, this is a racist government. You know, that's the kind of stuff that the SNP brought to Parliament, and hopefully it looks like a lot of them are about to get decimated, and they'll be going back to Westminster with a substantially smaller cohort, which is very good news to me, because of course that they are only projected by the exit poll to get 10 seats. So in Scotland, if Labour's going to win seats, if the Lib Dems are going to win seats in Scotland, I would prefer it would be Tories, because Reform really isn't in contention in any Scottish seats. So naturally I would prefer Tories to be winning seats in Scotland. But if it's going to be the Lib Dems or the Labour at the expense of the SNP, that to me, I'll take that. That to me is a decent result in Scotland. So that's kind of the national overview. Just going by the Survation poll, that's kind of what the state of play is, how we're going to go into the evening. So I'll keep this map up. We'll have a little gander on Twitter. Okay, exit poll says the Tories will hold all their Scottish seats. That would be a very surprising result. So we are going to be doing a fair bit of Twitter scrolling for the evening. If people are minded to, this is my Twitter account, at MDELABROC1, Delabrock1. If anyone wants to come give me a follow. My account's kind of been a gimmicky account for most of the election. Once the election is kind of over and done with, I'll probably go back mostly focusing to ship posting and talking about Ukraine. But that is my account. So this is the account we will be looking to. Jacob Rees-Mogg predicted to lose his seat. So that's the other thing that's going to go through the night. A lot of Tories are going to lose their seats, and a lot of those seats are going to be government ministers and very high-profile Tory names. So that's the thing that we're also going to be keeping tabs on as the evening goes on. Kind of do a bit of a bingo session to see what Tory ministers lose their seats. I don't understand why this guy's stuff always, because I don't follow him. He's the worst presenter on GB News. I don't care about his gay politics, literally and figuratively, and I don't understand why GB News has him as like their lead presenter, but for some reason he's still forced onto my pardon me. So but yeah, exit poll, Reform seats, Bassett Law, Great Yarmouth. Is there an exit poll map people are looking at that's going around that we could nobble onto? Pardon me. So this is kind of the nuance of British elections. I know, what is this, a stream for ants? Yeah, I know, it's not my fault. OBS is being weird. If anyone has any advice, they could pop me to tell me how to sort out this, why OBS is being so frustrating with me and not allowing me to expand my screen. Please do let me know. Because believe me, it's frustrating to me as it is to you. I have no idea why it's doing this, and the button I usually do to fix it is no longer there, and I don't know why. Scale the window. Canvas. So I don't want to be that guy who is going to like nip out and have to look up a YouTube tutorial on how to fix my screen. What about the opening video? Was that properly scaled, or what was the deal with that? But so George Galloway set to lose his. Ooh, that would be a big one, because I was projecting that Rochdale would probably stay with Galloway. So exit poll is projecting that George Galloway will lose his Rochdale seat, which would be quite a blow.
Poll. We can see those numbers of seats. We've been through them, of course. Labour for... Yeah, we've all been talking about these numbers of seats. And if we look at the exit poll, we can see those numbers of seats. We've been through them, of course. Labour 410, Conservatives 131, and right down there, Reform 13. But what about the numbers of votes? Well, we've been crunching the numbers behind the scenes. And let's look at our vote share prediction here. Look at that number for Reform. They jump from below the Liberal Democrats to above the Liberal Democrats. 17% for Reform is our initial estimate for the vote share for Reform. We can see that 36% number for Labour. That's less than Boris Johnson got last time around. It's less than David Cameron got in 2015 when he won 37% of the vote. But of course, these are initial figures, but it looks like a 10-point lead for the Labour Party rather than the 20-point lead the polls were suggesting. But wow, look at that difference. 17% for Reform. That translates, according to the exit poll, into 13 seats. Now, the Lib Dems winning 61 seats, but on vote share, 9.4%. It's also worth noting the Greens picking up 6%, but the exit poll saying 2 seats. Clearly, there'll be a lot of wasted Green votes around in the country as well. And wow, look at that SNP vote. Of course, that's UK-wide, but 2.6%. I think the headline figure there is by vote share. Look at that, 17% for the Reform Party. That's perhaps at the upper end of what some pollsters were predicting.
So, that's actually a good segue for me to elucidate on a number of issues there. So, for people who are not aware, because I imagine a lot of you lovely people are not British, probably Americans, Canadians, and Europeans. In the UK, the electoral system is called first past the post, and it is based that the plurality of the vote is what takes the seat, not an overall majority, but the plurality of the vote. So let's say you have a constituency of, say, 60,000 voters, and a Conservative candidate gets 20,000 votes, but then the Labour candidate gets 17,000 votes, and then a Lib Dem candidate gets 16,000 votes, and then a Reform candidate gets like 13,000 votes, and then other candidates get the rest. The Conservatives, because they have the most votes but not majority, takes the seat. So the first past the post is the person with the most votes wins. And this is why now whenever you expand this out across the country, across like a good 650 seats, that really builds up into numbers. This is where UKIP never really managed to get beyond it, despite getting millions of votes. You'll have millions of votes that could end up with no representation, like what famously happened in 2015, where UKIP got, I think it was, what was the infamous, was it 2015 election? So, results. UKIP got just 3,800,000 votes, so just under 4 million votes, and infamously ended up with 1 seat, and that was Douglas Carr as well. And that didn't particularly last long, if I can recall particularly. Nigel came very close to winning the seat in Thanet, but just missed out. So that's the peculiarity of first past the post. So as homosexual GB News presenter kindly points out to us, this is why your Reform could end up with 17.2% of the vote, which is massive. That's kind of better than some of the prediction and polls I were getting. Could end up with 17% of the national vote, which would translate into millions and millions of votes, but end up with 13% of the vote, 13 seats. But the Lib Dems can end up with just under 10% of the vote, but end up with almost 6 times the seats of Reform. That's because the Lib Dem vote is a lot more concentrated into particular seats. So the Reform vote is going to be spread out across the country, whereas the Lib Dem vote, just taking these two parties as an example, the Lib Dem vote is very much more coordinated and cohesive into very specific seats. So they make the majority vote in those seats as opposed to Reform where it's more diffuse. But the big story now is even just with those 13 seats, that is massive for Reform because, like I say, UKIP has never managed and Nigel's never managed to make that breakthrough into Parliament. So that sort of wall that used to exist, because it was a big attack point that the Tories used to throw against Nigel, was that, yeah, you can get all these votes, but you'd never get elected. Well, now that has been, that wall, that sort of mental block has been broken down because now Reform is in there with potentially up to 13 or more seats. Even if it was just Nigel in there, that would be astounding enough. But the other thing that's interesting to me is this Labour vote, because Labour were projected to get more than 40% of the vote. So they're actually down a fair bit on what they were projected to get by most polls in the country. I think a lot of this is people who have gone to Reform, because this Tory vote is a lot higher than I expected. Infamously in 2015, the thing that did the big election in 2015 was what was called as the quiet Conservative, the quiet Tory vote. These were people that the polls had managed to miss. Pollsters had managed to sort of miss out in their methodology. So these people turned up to vote, voted Conservative, and completely flummoxed the pollsters and the conventional wisdom because they were not counted in the polling. It looks like that has happened again because this vote, the shy Tory vote, is a lot higher than what I was expecting, which then leads me to the question. I reckon probably around 10% of Tory voters have gone to Reform, and then I think maybe another 4% or maybe a bit higher have come from the Labour Party. So these are some very interesting results. I think if the election had gone on for another couple of weeks, I think the Labour Party would have started to seriously start to lose ground against Nigel because Reform was only starting. The Reform was mainly focusing at the Tories, attacking the Conservative Party, picking up a lot of these disenfranchised Conservatives, but they were starting to pivot to target the Labour Party. Had the election campaign gone on longer, had it been set for the autumn as we were expected, and Nigel had been able to announce his intention to stand as he originally planned for, then I think we probably would have seen bigger chunks of the Labour Party go away, start to swing towards Reform. But I think this to me is, I'm seeing very much potential here for future Reform growth, particularly going into 2029. So we're stuck with a Labour government. It's going to be bad, but it's one of these perverse realities where the worse it is, the better it'll be, because whenever the Labour Party, like their policies just start to screw up, their economic policies, their insane policies on transgender issues, on migration start to fall apart, well then a lot of those voters, a lot of those sort of socially conservative but economically left-wing voters are going to start looking for, well, we've been with the Tories, now we've been with Labour, now Nigel's starting to come up, and this is proving to be a serious challenge. So this is the game plan for 2029. The worse the Labour Party administers the country, the better electorally and politically it comes for Reform and Nigel. So, like I say, things to note if this is what actually turns out to be. The Labour vote is down on the poll on what the polls projected. The Tory vote is higher, almost certainly down to the shy Tories. Again, like I say, these are people that the pollsters miss. These are people who, you know, it's socially awkward to be right-wing, even if you consider Tory right-wing. So if people ask them who they're going to vote, they'll be like, oh, I'm going to vote Lib Dem or something, but then they go into the polling booth and vote Conservative. These kind of people, looks like they have managed to keep the Tory vote up above the sort of catastrophic Armageddon levels that they were projected, and then this is a very good result for Reform. Ideally, if it was a really good day, Reform would be above 20%, but 17% that's a good solid, and especially since it seems to be that a fair amount of that has been stripped from the Labour Party, that is a very good result. If this is what it actually ends up turning out to be. So Grimsby, So there, Grimsby showing 37% for Labour, 32% for Reform. That will probably come down very close to the wire. Again, this is just on the exit poll, so we're probably going to have a lot of recounts as the night goes on. But I am optimistic about the results. Very optimistic about the results. So Ben Habib is a guy I would like to see come into Parliament as well, alongside Nigel Farage. He's a very articulate guy, has stood up a lot for Northern Ireland, whereas he never had to. He's come across, helped a lot to fight against the protocol. So very articulate, very capable guy. I hope Ben Habib is going to get into Parliament, and it looks like he indeed will. So let me see. As partogram. Browse all constituencies. Does this give us a map, or no, it doesn't. So I'm not too sure if this is going to work because of waiting results. I'll tell you what, we'll just quickly nip across to the BBC. I am well aware because of the... Can you guys see this? Is it somewhat legible on the screen? I hope it is. But this is the BBC map. It's blank because they're going to fill in the seats as they won. So I'll just go into the peculiarities of Northern Ireland in this election. Northern Ireland's fairly detached politically from the rest of the UK because of our history. We don't really have normal parties from the mainland standing here, although the Conservatives do stand like candidates, but they don't really, they're like paper candidates. The closest you'll get is going to be something like Reform, which stood in a joint electoral alliance with a group called the Traditional Unionist Voice. You get the SDLP, which is like a nationalist, Irish nationalist left-wing party. They take the Labour whip. You have the Alliance Party, which is just the most nauseating, like, shit lib party. They take the Lib Dem whip. So politics in Northern Ireland is mostly stratified between Irish nationalism and Ulster Unionism. Parties that want to see the unification of Ireland, which I am against, and then parties that wish to maintain the union with the United Kingdom, which I am in for. And then you have like this nauseating shit lib party called Alliance, which is like, we are above this sectarian politics. So we want transgenders and refugees and as much immigration as you can pump into Northern Ireland as possible, because that's what normal politics is about in the middle. So this is my seat. Not going to dox too much about me, but this is where I voted today in a very Northern Ireland strange politically, and then North Down is even more strange from the rest of Northern Ireland. So I vote in North Down, which is this bizarre little constituency. Here, just to give a spiel about it, the contention is between Unionism and the Alliance Party. The incumbent Alliance MP is just an odious fat pig of a man called Stephen Farry. Only time he ever speaks in Parliament, it is about Palestine, it's about refugees, it's about transgender issues, it's about the most nauseating, like, progressive shit lib stuff you would imagine, like literally San Francisco tier bullshit this guy comes out with. But because it's one of the oldest constituencies in the UK, you have a lot of like these middle class boomer types who are like, we're above sectarian politics, so we'll vote for these nice liberal people, but we don't really pay attention to what they actually stand for, but we'll vote for them because it's like, we're from North Down and we're quite posh, and it's socially acceptable to be like very liberal in North Down, so we vote for the Liberal Party, the Alliance Party, because they're so above these like flag waving sectarian nationalist people. So that's who elected him last time. His main challenger is a guy called Alex Easton, who is an independent unionist, used to be part of a group called the DUP, which is like the mainstream unionist party. And then beside him is the guy I personally voted for, Colonel Tim Collins, who is standing for the Ulster Unionists. Don't like the UUP, voted for Tim Collins as it's very much a personal vote. The Colonel was a member of the regiment that my grandfather was a part of. Actually took my grandfather, drove him to regimental reunions and came to my grandfather's funeral. Because I'm from a very strong military family, that kind of loyalty needs to be rewarded. So I went out and canvassed for the man a couple of times, and I trusted him with his vote. But to be honest, unfortunately, it looks like Tim Collins isn't really likely to win the seat. So the race in North Down is very much between Alex Easton, the independent unionist, and Stephen Farry, the nauseating shit-lib Alliance Party candidate. Hopefully, although I don't think he'll be a very good MP, Alex Easton just edges it. But there is also the fear that someone call me. There is also the fear. Sorry, I'm actually getting DMs from a very high-placed source. Sorry, I'm just so there's a guy I know who does a lot of work in politics, pretty high level, who's just messaging me. Very happy with the result. Labour vote share is the main thing, lower than Corbyn. Right-wing party will be in power the next election. Yeah, so fuck it, I'll invite him onto the stream. So he's very happy. I'm fairly optimistic about it. So I think this is Labour's going to be in government, but I think this is a good election to build from. So so I wasn't actually aware of it, but so here I am almost certain he wouldn't do it because, like I said, this guy actually has a reputation. And okay, fuck it. He seems like he right. Here, I'll send him the link. But this guy actually has a reputation. So I'm pretty sure he wouldn't whenever he looks at it. But he seems very optimistic. I'm fairly if you want. So there we go. Let's see what he says. See if something comes out of it. So yeah, like I say, the story in North Down is my fear is that the UUP kind of focused their attention more at trying to attract the unionist votes rather than going after your sort of soft unionist alliance party votes. Which I think is probably going to damage Alex and could potentially damage Alex Easton's votes, because Alex Easton's standing as an independent and he's a very well regarded independent because he's been a very good councillor in MLA here. But there's a bit of a fear that Tim might take enough of his votes to allow Stephen Farry just to pip in, which would be I would be very not happy Let's put it that way, because that man has been a terrible MP for North Down. Alongside this, the other big stories in Northern Ireland are projected to be, it looks like the UUP might take South Antrim from the DUP. East Belfast is another constituency where it's going to be a hard, close fight between the DUP. Again, the DUP are sort of like your socially conservative unionists. They come from a very strong, like, Protestant fundamentalist background, but that's kind of moderated in recent times. So that's your DUP. They're going to be in a very close contest with the leader of the Alliance Party, a nauseating fat pig woman. You can just tell I love the Alliance Party so much, but this nauseating fat pig woman called Naomi Long, who, again, just to illustrate, whenever I talk about, like, progressive parties, just to, like, I'm not making this up, Long, if you want to see what these people are trying to put through in an election campaign, here you go. So this is the kind of politics that this woman who's standing in East Belfast and the Alliance Party stands for. Like I say, it's the most nauseating shit lib. He just left a comment. I am optimistic. Oh, thank you. So he's watching. Thanks very much. Hope you're keeping well. So like I say, this would bang. No, you wouldn't. You horny fuck. You you do need. So like I say, absolute shit lib party. If there's a transgender issue, if there's like something that advances the rights of pedophiles, if there's something that advances refugees or immigrants into the country, this woman and the Alliance Party stands for it. So they're kind of the big thing that we're hoping isn't going to do well in Northern Ireland. So they currently hold North Down, which is where I live. Hopefully Alex Easton takes it. Hopefully Gavin Robinson, the DUP candidate, holds on in East Belfast and keeps out Naomi Long. But also, interestingly, apparently Lagan Valley, which is another DUP-held seat, is in contention between the DUP and the Alliance Party. I'm not too sure on the specifics of there, because if I'm going to be honest, I kind of zone out of Northern Ireland. I live here, but I try to pretend I don't. And I've been focused more on politics on the mainland. So I only really know the intricacies of what's happening in my own constituency. But as the night goes on, hopefully we'll get a bit more understanding as we go on. And Naomi Long, just to give you an idea, like, Jesus Christ, that is the one we're talking about. There you go. That is the face of shitlib politics in Northern Ireland. The face of people who believe that pedophiles should be able to have anonymity and also eat as much pizza, apparently, as they can have. So Barry Stanton posting black pills. I think he ended up voting Reform in the end, but Barry Stanton said his local Reform candidate was like a Zionist Jew, so you can expect that that result from Barry. But so yeah, I hope she's not going to be smiling by the end of the night, because fucking hell, it's pretty grim. Pretty grim. So we'll see what we've got. So just a reminder, in about an hour's time, Felix should be waking up in Tokyo time and then joining us, and then we'll start to, round about that time is whenever we should start to really get the results coming through. So what's happening now is the polls closed about an hour ago. The ballot boxes will be being picked up and taken to count centres where the counting will begin. We don't do electronic voting in the UK. Everything's counted by hand. It's hand ballot. That's where postal votes, your personal ballots that you put in the box, will all be taken and counted up. So that will be happening across the country as we speak. And in about an hour, maybe even 40 minutes from now, we might be able to start getting to your first results. Usually these will be your Labour seats up in, I believe it's Sunderland, is the place that counts the fastest, brings in the results the fastest. So that's whenever the starting gun should fire, and as the knight. So that is whenever the first results will start to come through. Okay. Interesting note here. So these are all this is the exit poll at the top, and then these are the various pollsters that have gone throughout the last polls they did a couple of days ago, and it looks like the Reform Party, if the exit poll turns out to be even half accurate, the Reform Party will have beaten all expectations through all these polls. So person in chat who just said it's not very optimistic or he's black-pilled at the moment, don't be. I'm actually very, very buoyed by this. I think opposition, reform and opposition under a Labour government is where we want to be. Like I was saying, going back to this here, these old Labour seats up here, which are obviously this is a 2019 map. These Labour seats up here are going to be pretty. Okay, Felix might be joining us a little bit earlier than expected. I tell you what, I'll just make a new group. Pardon me. So we'll likely have Felix join us earlier than anticipated. So I think he's just woke up, so we'll just let him wake himself up and we'll get him onto the stream. So I can't see the map. You should be able to see the map because it's showing up on the screen at the moment. But I've always wanted to go whale hunting. I bet you have. Jump on the stream. Politics is a bit too depressing. I don't see why, because this is where we want to be. This is perfect territory for me to build up the reform opposition going into 2029. Is this a specific seat or what? I tell you what, we'll mute these chats at the moment, just so it's not popping off in the background. Just have a quick look. So, a
screen like this, but you know, we are giving you a less than 1% chance of hanging on to your seat. Steve, I'm sorry to be putting you up here on the screen like this, but you know, we are giving you a...
Good. Steve Baker has been a woeful Tory MP. He's been like the epitome of the sleazy careerist Tories. Background about 2018, he tried to like position himself as like the right wing, hot, you know, pro Brexit, dry Tory candidate figure, and then he just completely sold it all out for a ministerial career. Absolute disgrace of a MP, and by the sounds of it, he is going to lose his seat and hopefully his entire political career. So Steve Baker looks to lose his seat. That will be one Tory MP off the bingo list, and good riddance to him. Couldn't find a more stereotypical sleazy Tory to go. So just bouncing around. Pardon me. Pardon me. So, I don't understand how the Sun could fucking endorse the Labour Party of all people, but it's what they're going to do. So, depending on how this vote share actually pans out, I'll tell you what, we're going to do something that's a bit scummy, but we're going to go to 2019 election, and we'll have a quick look at what the results were in terms of vote share. So, Wikipedia is a dog shit website, but it's good for its uses, and one of these uses are going to be good now. So this was the results at the last election. As you can see, there's the Tories up there with their historic underbores, 43.6% vote share. And then this is what I want you to kind of pay a bit of attention to, 32% for the Labour Party. And then going by the exit polls, it's saying that the Labour Party only got 36%, so that is an increase. If this holds up and indeed turns out to be the results, that is an increase of like only 4%, which is actually dismal considering a lot of the polls were projecting Labour to be up in the 40s. So again, going back to my earlier spiel, bro, like, just jump on the stream. I mean, I appreciate the constant takes on WhatsApp, but just jump on the stream. You can say this better than me. I think he's a sleazy dick. You think he's a coward. He's probably both. But like, if you want to, just, I'll not say your name. You don't have to say what you do, but I mean, you can just jump on stream and give your high IQ, well-informed take, rather than screaming at me across WhatsApp. I mean, like, bro, the option is always open to you. Felix will be joining shortly as well. I'm sure you and him can have a bit of a chat as well. So you know who you are. If you want, the offer's open if you want to jump on the stream, bro. But yeah. So like I say, 32% only going up to 36%. That's an increase of only 4%. If this does hold out to be the actual results, that is pretty dismal. But then again, you can see the peculiarities of the first past the post electoral system, where a 4% increase in the vote gives them potentially one of the largest parliamentary majorities in history. But that is not a very good ground to build. Like, looking at 1997 and what Tony Blair got in vote share and in terms of seats, the Labour Party was able to run off more than a decade, 13 years of government off of that. This is not something that you're going to run like a decade of government off. Like 2029, a lot of these seats that the Labour Party are about to pick up, depending on how badly they screw up the country, they'll lose a lot of those seats, potentially even go back down to hung parliament territory. That might be a bit too optimistic, but this is not. It'll be like one of the largest parliamentary majorities in history, but it'll be one of those. It'll be like one of the weakest parliamentary majorities in history, because next election probably a significant amount of that will go. Depending on what the Conservatives and the Reform Party do, whether there's some kind of deal between them, whether the Tories just continue to implode and relegate themselves to irrelevance, and the Reform Party properly establishes themselves as an opposition, I'm not seeing a very stable Labour. Like, the Labour Party will probably have a very busy government. They'll probably use this to try and push through as much legislation they can, because if this does turn out to be accurate, this 4% increase, which went from one of the worst election results in history to potentially one of the best in seat terms, Labour victories in parliamentary history, it's a very shaky one. Yeah, they'll have a very strong majority, but it will not be a very stable majority, because that next election, a lot of these seats only need, like, again, with the big caveat, if this does turn out to be accurate, this is not a very stable. A lot of these seats are not going to be safe seats. A lot of these seats are going to be very marginal ones. Then the question will come down to who will be the proper challengers to them. Will it be a Reform Party? Will it be a rejuvenated Conservative Party? Or is it going to be like some kind of coalition or merger between these two parties? Because just look at this vote share. It would never happen because there's a lot of Reform voters who will never vote Conservative and a lot of Conservatives who will never vote Reform. But between them, that's a 38% vote share, which is 2 points higher than Labour. Like I say, it's very, because of the first past the post system in the UK, there's various peculiarities like this where we could very well look at this scenario where Labour wins one of the biggest parliamentary majorities in history, and then within the space of one parliamentary cycle could suffer potentially one of the greatest defeats in seat terms in electoral history in the country. So a lot of people saying black-pilled and all this kind of stuff. Look, I'm not black-pilled. This Labour government is going to be shit. It's going to be bad. But the caveat is, as bad and as shit as it will get, is more fertile ground for Reform and for Nigel going into 2019. So this is the accelerationist argument in electoral terms. We voted to kill off the Tories in this election. Let Labour run rampant in government for a term. They'll screw up. And then in 2029, that's whenever these chickens come home to roost. So, like I say, I'm actually surprisingly white-pilled. It will be good to start slinging shit in opposition towards like proper shit libs, not wet Tories and all these careerist types. Properly going after proper left wingers who are unabashed and unashamed of what they do, instead of like these cowardly Tories that hide all this progressive shit that they've done underneath their manifestos and their times in Parliament. I think a good right-wing opposition to a Labour Party will be the thing that will properly rejuvenate the electoral base going forward in 2029. I'm very optimistic. Like I say, it's going to be painful a couple of years, but as painful as it gets means a bigger win is potentially down the line to come. So that is where I'm looking at. So I'm probably going to have to mute Syrian Girl because she's probably going to be posting war crimes from Gaza throughout the entire night. So we have our first seat declared. Houghton in Sunderland South, which sounds about right because it's always Sunderland that makes its first declaration. They declared first during Brexit and they have made their first declaration, and it is a Labour gain. 18,000 seats, that is very good. This is where I'm talking about, guys. This is where you have to be white-pilled. This is rock solid Labour. This is your hardcore North Tyneside, Sunderland area, hardcore Labour, voted Labour for over 100 years kind of territory. And look down here, again, this is like going to be a historic Labour victory. Labour majority, we don't have the majority listed, but 18,800 votes for Labour. The next opposition, Reform, at 11,000 votes. That's 7,000 votes between the two. And this, to me, this is the kind of seat that going into 2029 is the kind of seat I'm talking about, that Reform could really put in a serious challenge and take from Labour. This is the kind of the political landscape that's being set up that makes 2029. This is why I'm white-pilled, guys, because the Tories are just basically in no contention here. They might have done well at the last election, but they've metaphorically pooped the bed on it. This is Reform territory. And see if these Conservative votes went to the Reform vote, that Labour majority would be down to less than just around about 1,400 votes, round about that. 1,400 votes. So if there was a unified quote-unquote right wing candidate in this seat at this election, the Labour majority, this would be like a marginal seat. This would be a very marginal seat for Labour in one of their rock solid heartlands. So these are the kind of results that I'm going to be paying attention to as the night goes on, because this is where the future of the country could be made in 5 years' time, whenever the next election comes around and Labour's screwed up the country and Reform has properly professionalised itself, put in the infrastructure, the constituency networks, and starts to close the gap. And a lot of these Labour voters start to peel away from the party and start to look towards viable alternatives. So that's our first declaration of the night. Houghton in Sunderland South, Labour hold, but very, very good Reform turnout in this seat. So here we go. Vote share just under 50% for Labour, just under 30% for Reform. Tories lost over 20% of their vote, down to 14% of the vote. So that's our first declaration of the evening. And Labour hold, but very white. There are silver linings to be taken away from it. So these are the kind of seats we need to be looking at. So let's get these tweets out, folks. Like I say, my account, my X account at the moment is kind of just like a Nigel Farage stan account. This will go back to its usual shit posting and Ukraine posting when the election goes away. But if anyone's interested, here, I'll throw the link in the chat. Do go give us a follow on Twitter. So I'm going to find something interesting on X for you guys to watch as I go close a window and probably get myself a beer. Here, we'll listen to Nadine Dorries.
I mean, 170, it actually proves, so this is true, these figures do play out over the evening, that Keir Starmer is no Tony Blair. And there are a lot of Labour MPs who thought they were going to get a much bigger majority that who'll go into this Parliament already dissatisfied with their leader. And also, sorry, I just carry on. Democracy, Harriet, you made the point about how important democracy is. It's really important that with a large majority, although it's less than 97, and that's, could be done to your credit, Alistair, that we have an opposition that can hold the government to account. And there's been some really serious concerns about will there be a number of minor parties that could form a coalition against the government of the day, having almost a left-wing opposition and a left-wing government. What I think it shows is that democracy survives because there will be a healthy opposition against the government.
5 years ago, we were announcing an 80-seat majority under Boris Johnson, and it's been wiped out to the worst Conservative result ever. And, well, I just want to put this to Nadine, because obviously you're a close friend of Boris Johnson. And the same question we put to Kwasi, the rot started with him, didn't it?
No, actually,
that's where this began.
There has been, well, you might say that, but I'd rather look at the poll today, which was recently by More in Common, which showed that not one voter group blames Boris Johnson for what has happened to the Conservative Party. In fact, when Boris Johnson was leading the Conservative Party, Reform were only on 3% of the vote. Now Boris Johnson has gone, you've got Reform predicted to have 13%. Both Boris Johnson and David Cameron always had an eye to the right. They always were very careful to ensure that the right never managed to bubble up, and Farage never got a purchase like he has now. He's gone, and they're on predicted to have 13 seats.
Honestly, Nadine, you've got to get over Boris Johnson.
Had I known that this was Alistair Campbell's stream, I would never have played that, because that guy is a fucking dickhead and a war criminal. So, So I think we might have another couple of declarations coming through. But let's, first of all, most important thing, let's crack open a beer and get the night properly started. Right, how do I add people into this? Right, so we might have Felix joining us now. So we're going to be routing this through Telegram. So we will see how this goes. Never quite done it this way, but so Felix, I think you should be able to speak if you just unmute yourself, because you're not muted on my end, but
how about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Can the chat hear me?
Chat, can you hear Felix? Is he coming through for you guys? Just a bit of latency to wait for.
Oh, we shall see.
Yeah, can't hear Felix.
All right. All right. So, how are you doing, Michael?
Yeah, I'm okay. As I was just saying, actually surprisingly optimistic, despite the fact we're probably heading for the biggest Labour government in history. But I'm actually surprisingly optimistic. Some very good first results coming through that shows that Nigel is going to smash it into government. Well, smash it into Parliament with 13 seats, and sorry, just dropping a message for a friend. We'll get into Parliament with potentially up to 13 seats or more, and it looks like Reform is going to be the only real viable opposition to Labour in the north of the country, which is a very, very good place for them to be. So how are you keeping, Felix? Pardon me.
Well, I'm okay. I should tell your audience I've just sort of woken up, so I am a little bit not only probably going to stammer somewhat, but just washing the sleep out of my eyes. But I'm glad to be here. Glad to sort of partake in the usual clown show that I would say democratic elections are. I mean, whether it be in whether it be here, whether it be there, whether it be anywhere. But yeah, it's all good. It's interesting. It's kind of election season everywhere. I think I just put out a video the other day. They're having an election here for the governor of Tokyo on the 7th, so in a couple of days here. And it's quite interesting because I guess people have become so fed up with the electoral process here that there's a party. It's called the anti-NHK party, and it's basically the same thing as an anti-BBC for the UK, or an anti-ABC for Australia, or anti-CBC for Canada, or an anti what is the American? It's not
so like
PBS,
an anti-state broadcaster.
Exactly, and these state broadcasters that basically incur fees on the general public, and generally try to force them to. And what they've done is, in order to, it's kind of interesting, whenever they have elections here, because of the way the cities are built in Tokyo, there's not a lot of room, so not a lot of people have lawns, so not a lot of people can put their political party or their preferred candidate on a sort of a placard in their front, their front lawn. So they have these boards that are set up near stations with the candidates, and they'll have the candidate and their positions. And so generally last election, it was, I think, a record of 30, somewhere in those lines. But the anti-NHK party has realized that it can field as many candidates as it wants, with no real incurring any costs. So what they've done is they've basically tried to take over the boards, the electoral boards near the stations. And I think they're fielding something like 27 candidates.
Wow.
And what they've done is they've also allowed anyone with any kind of whatsoever, you could basically, if you've donated to their party, you can pretty much have your preferred message on any of the boards anywhere in Tokyo. And some of the other ones that are kind of interesting is there's a guy, he's running along the candidate lines of, he wants to stop the sort of precipitous decline in the birth rate by allowing polygamy. Another guy running on the sort of platform of him wanting to basically remove mosaics from Japanese porn. Another guy, a woman, who's saying she'll basically show up as governor topless if they every day for every press conference if they vote for her. So anyway, the point is it's a basically clown show. And at least what I'm loving about the Japanese is they're honest about it. These shows. But anyway,
Felix, do you think Yuriko's got it in the bag?
I'm sorry?
Do you think Yuriko's got it in the bag? Yuriko-chan.
Yeah. She's gonna be back. Oh, it's good to hear from you. It's been a while.
I once almost chundered on her at a state banquet. By the way,
really?
She's a really nice girl.
Yeah.
So just to interject here, the posh guy talking is our highly placed source. I'll not name him unless he wants to be named, but he's here to regale us with his autistic political knowledge from the elite level and his drunken antics across the globe. So
yeah. I mean, people can look up the state banquets in Tokyo in 2016 and probably find me from that. But no, the president of Mongolia was doing shots at the table and things got a bit out of hand. No, I was looking through your chat, Michael. I'm going to have to jump off in a few minutes. So there's some people calling, but everyone's being very black-pilled by this. I think this is probably the best possible result for the right wing in the UK.
I agree.
That I could have forecast. You've already gone through these kind of safe Labour seats with very, very large swings to what is nominally in the parlance of the British media a far-right party. I think we're seeing the beginnings of what we've seen in mainland Europe in the UK with this, where when the right can coalesce around one issue, and that being immigration, which is the major issue facing us of this time, they will do incredibly well out of self-interest with the majority of people currently in the UK. I think the Conservatives have enough seats to remain as an effective opposition. The critical thing is, I come at this as a reform Canadian perspective, you need enough of an infrastructure there to take over to enable you to win the next election. Critically, Reform have done incredibly well, and Reform have done well enough to say that if the Conservatives don't adopt Reform's policies, they will never win a seat at a by-election. They're unlikely to be able to put forward an effective manifesto, because why would you vote for the Conservative Party if there's a Reform Party which has a Conservative manifesto and a Conservative Party which has a Labour-light manifesto? So people are very upset by this, and upset with the results, and I'm not quite seeing why, because we've had 14 years of essentially a Labour government, and now we're going to have 5 years of a Labour government. It's not like much is going to change.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is people just don't really understand the system and the way politics and like the electoral system works in this country. Because we've had another declaration just to emphasize the point I was making earlier. Blythe and Ashington up in Northumberland, Labour with basically 40,000 votes, and then Reform comes out of nowhere with 22,000 votes. Almost half the votes there, completely smashes the Tories right down in the third place. like this to me is a great result. Because like these are your kind of seats that are your rock solid Labour, and this is like the reddest of the red outside of Liverpool and Labour places. If this is how good Reform is doing here, like I'm thinking like what's going to happen in like the south of Yorkshire and Lancashire in these more marginal sort of quote unquote safe Labour seats is people.
Michael, just to flag up something, you kind of missed. The Green Party is siphoning Labour votes as well. So the Labour vote share is not as high as people are expecting. I forecast it down at this level in my circles. I felt that the Green Party siphoning up essentially the client vote for the Labour Party has not been effectively modelled onto the polling yet.
Okay.
And I do think this removes a lot of nominal safe seats for Labour, which they've stuffed full of new entrants over the last 30 years. They're going to be threatened there with a kind of a surging green flag, as it were, with the Green Party. And I think that's really going to damage their chances of securing safe seats in England going forward.
What, out of curiosity, what would be your take on George Galloway and the Workers' Party? Do you think they're going to make much of a difference, or is it just going to be very much those sort of niche Muslim seats where they will have any real influence at all?
Well, the thing is, there's a number of niche Muslim seats now
yeah,
that there weren't 20 years ago. We're coming up to about 30 in the UK. And that number will only go up to 50 by the next election. So, it's a very, and particularly as a communitarian religion, they are told who to vote for by the mosque.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the Catholic Church in America telling you to vote for the Dems in the 1950s. So you do have a very significant politicized religion in these seats. So if they choose to go green and they stay green, then I would worry about, I'm not going to worry about Labour's chances going forwards. I think we should be less worried about Labour's chances going forwards. I think they're being assailed on both sides. I think people felt that dealt with the momentum Corbynites.
Yeah.
And somehow that would guarantee them victory forever. The other issue I'd like to flag up now, again, because I've only got a few minutes, is I think people misunderstand what Parliament is. Parliament's a part of a process. You can imagine if you're going to put a law into action, you've got one of 14 layers. Parliament's levels 3, 4, and 5 of that.
Yeah.
But you still have to draft and you still have to transact. The Tories, with a majority of 80, have been unable to get laws to Parliament, and have been unable to take those laws from Parliament and actionalise them. Labour, with a majority of 1, if you look at Blair, obviously had a very, very large majority, but the civil service will be in train with Labour. Sue Gray moved from Cabinet Office to Sama's office. So they will, they could have a majority of 1 or a majority of 1,000,000. It doesn't matter. They will do what they want to do. So I think people worrying about the size of majority is an irrelevance. They've got a majority. They will do what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, the supermajority is kind of like this Americanism that's been adopted by the Tories in the media in this country. It's like there isn't like a constitutional requirement. Like if you get 3/4 of the Parliament, you can like change the constitution kind of thing. It's just a majority is a majority.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, is there any other peculiarities? I mean, do you mind if I was just to call you by your first name? Just so so Nick, everyone, this is Nick. He's a friend of ours who works in these kind of sphericals. Is there any other kind of peculiarities or interesting tidbits you think we should be keeping an eye out for the evening?
Well,
or
my sister says hi, Felix, which is a bit of a peculiarity, but anyway.
Tell Pip hello.
Hey, it's good to hear from you. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'll be seeing you in my kitchen, I presume, in the near future. We can drink another couple of bottles of gin or something.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good.
But no, I just generally think the Labour vote shares below Corbyn, which shows that the movement of voters from ethnic groups to the Greens. Critically, I'd be interested in seeing the youth vote share. I think we might see plans for votes for 16-year-olds shelved very rapidly.
Yeah.
If the Reform vote amongst young men is at the kind of levels that the Reform internal polling was showing this morning, which I think was 34% of 18 to 20-year-old white males were voting for Reform.
That would replicate a lot of the data that they're seeing on the continent as well. is they were talking about believing that all young people were somehow intrinsically on the left, but it's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah, you look at like in France and Germany, where AFD and National Rally are insanely popular, like 30-40% of the youth vote.
Absolutely. In Sweden as well. All right. So yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Nick.
Oh no, I'm just rambling incomprehensibly. I've been up for like 72 hours on this, so
sure you've been doing God's work, helping getting the right people into government, parliament. I mean, just out of curiosity, Nick, what's your assessment for the state of play for the Tories going forward? I mean, who are we expecting to see cleaved off? Is it going to be like the wet, moderate part of the party that's going to remain, or are we going to see some of the decent, quasi-decent?
Have you covered why the election took place yet on your stream?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, so look, this isn't God's honest truth, but this is kind of what I've heard, and I've heard from a number of people, was Rishi was forced to call the election when he did, and the reason it's been such a shit show is because it was called at very short notice, because there was not rumours, but a number of notes that were passed to number 10 by the One Nation group that there would be a major defection in the summer when the automatic ECHR secondary legislation trigger mechanism came in, which would have said, if they say we can't put the first flight to Rwanda, we just ignore that, and when the flight takes off, there would have been a rebellion of about 13 to 14 who would have crossed the floor to Labour, which would have put Rishi in vote of no confidence territory, because there are a number of letters already in and the threshold is the same, but when the total number comes down, the number of letters that are already in equals a potential vote of no confidence.
So basically he had the jump, or he was pushed.
Yeah, exactly. So his hand was forced. It wasn't like the 1922 committee hadn't made clear that if you guys didn't stop writing letters, Rishi was going to call snap election. I'm surprised this topic hasn't really been covered in the mainstream media. It was a day-to-day briefing that went into the press gallery before the election, and then suddenly people were like, why has Rishi called an election? It's like, well, you were warning them why this was going to happen. Anyway, but that aside, the One Nation group is febrile at the moment. They've put their own allies in, and I think there are going to be 10 to 20 additional One Nation Tories that weren't there that are there now.
And this is including, so what's left of the Conservatives is going to be fairly wet.
Yes, about 60% of the party. Critically, what you're going to have a situation like we had in 1997, where the party, which is incredibly pro-Europe, suddenly had space for dissenting voices, and because those dissenting voices were popular with the membership, they had a far greater volume outside of government than they did in government.
Yeah.
So you had someone like William Hague, who was an incredible Europhile, who was pro joining the euro, but the party itself was allowed to kind of face two directions on it. So I'm not saying the Tory party will necessarily split, but I think the right wing of the party will have a far easier time in opposition on topics like immigration, defence, woke shit than they did in government, where the whipping is far more stringent, as are ministerial commitments. So I think you'll see the party won't necessarily split. Reform will boss the party's agenda. A lot of MPs. You said something about Steve Baker earlier.
Yeah.
Someone like Steve Baker would have been put on fucking medical leave. That man had 3 nervous breakdowns in office. I'm not joking. The guy, I know the guy. He's had a number of nervous breakdowns from people threatening to kill his family. Jihadis in his constituency.
Wow, I mean, ultimately, because I can remember he put up that the video on his Twitter account of him being harassed by a pro-Palestine protester. But I have no sympathy for the man, because this is the result of the politics that he put into action in Parliament. He voted for this. He didn't do anything to stop it. And it's like,
look, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
All these people need hanging, as far as I'm concerned. But all I mean is voices like that will. You can quote me on that. People like that will at some point be marginalised in a way in opposition that they couldn't be in government, because There's always a phrase senior Tories you see in the papers, and it'll always be Sir Roger fucking Gale or some other arsehole who's not been relevant for 20 years, but because the party's in power, they get a voice which is disproportionate and allows them to boss an agenda. So, look, I think things will be very, very different very, very quickly. I'm not going to say that Reform will take the Conservative Party over, but I think they will control the Conservative Party agenda until the next election.
What about leadership? Do you have any ideas on who's a viable Tory leadership candidate, or is it just going to have to wait and see who survives the night?
Well, the last one I advised didn't do particularly well, Michael. So,
yeah, okay, fair enough.
No, look, in reality, I think the 1922 committee are trying to do a stitch up. They're meeting tomorrow morning, and they have another meeting on Monday. The reason they haven't had two meetings is because Brady's obviously stepping down, but they haven't appointed a new chair of the 1922. Yeah. So any vote they take tomorrow.
A very bizarre anecdote in that. I have Stephen Brady as a friend on Facebook somehow, must have been from my Tory days, and I just happened to notice I've been shitting out like Nigel propaganda and Reform propaganda onto my Instagram live, those stories for weeks now, and I've just noticed he has watched pretty much every single one. For some reason, he watches my Facebook/Instagram stories, and I was just like, okay, so a very senior Tory politician makes a note of watching what I put on Instagram. It's very, very bizarre.
I'm going to, well, I mean, Michael, I'm sure you've been in a parliamentary office before.
Yeah.
Other than Grant fucking Shapps, nobody ever watches their own socials. That'll be some staffer in Graham Brady. Farage Wave is a very compelling thing. So, but back to the topic. When it comes to leadership contenders, I know who they're going to trot out, and I know the membership's going to shit the bed. So, look, I think it'll be Suella, personally. If she gets to the final two, it'll be Suella. If it's not Suella, it'll be Kemi. But I know who they're putting out against them, and it's going to be tough to swallow, considering the results of tonight.
God, because I remember it was that Ted Tugendhat, however you pronounce his second name, he was floated as one.
Tom Tugendhat.
God help us.
Tom Tugendhat, the issue, his dad was one of the major people who were against, same-sex marriage. And, who's a proper hang-em-high Tory. Tom rebelled when he was younger, went off and married a French communist who became a very senior human rights lawyer and then a human rights judge in France. So he's there's a lot in his closet. Not calling him a homosexual. He's married a French woman, but and he probably swings that way. That would kill any leadership bid for him if he ever had the spotlight on him properly. Yeah. But he's a bit like a Jeremy Hunt, as somebody who's endlessly talked up by the corporate membership, who doesn't can't sustain 10 seconds in the glare of the actual kind of rank and file membership. But yeah, my big fear is that Penny survives and they put her up and she wins, because she is very, very effective at communication, even though what she's communicating is vile.
Cammy?
No, Penny.
Oh, Penny. Oh, yeah. God help us.
I was on the penny farthing for a very short period, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there cannot be not that I want to have CCHQ get me kicked out of the party again, but it's just I might have a membership to a party still just to purely have voting rights, and I will not be voting for a fucking woman who can't define her own bloody gender. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, she's backed by the Gates Foundation. Her primary backer is one of the people who gave a lot of money to Blair. Yeah. So she's compromised through and through. She's I don't want to use your kind of zoom of phrases, but she's the uni party through and through.
Yeah. Just in personal news, the candidate I voted for, Tim Collins, concedes North Down. Not that I was fucking expecting much, but he didn't exactly leave that very long. It's a bit annoying, but so any other hot takes you want to throw at us, Nick? I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're having a bit of a.
I've literally got 1 minute. Yeah. No. I'm look. It was nice to speak.
Yeah.
I'll leave your audience of youth to enjoy their first Labour government, I presume.
Well, I think a lot of the people listening probably aren't British. We're trying to articulate our wacky politics to them. But yeah, hopefully I'll get over to London soon and we can have a bit of a session. Do give Marcus my best on Saturday. What day is he coming over? Friday or Saturday?
If anyone's watching GB News tomorrow, if Can Dankula turns up pissed on that'll be my fault.
Is he coming over to yours tonight?
No, lunchtime tomorrow.
Oh, so, lunchtime tomorrow.
And he's doing GB News in the evening. Wow. So that should be quite fun.
Get him good.
Celebrate with divorce.
Yeah, well, get him good and smashed. And I'll pop along to London sooner rather than later and we'll have a bit of a bevy. Thanks very much, Nick. Sorry to drag you on, but I couldn't have you bombarding my WhatsApp all night.
I was letting Felix have his morning wanker, whatever he was up to over in Japan.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just having some toast right now while I listen to you guys. Sorry. No. I've already had my morning wank. That's already taken care of. Don't worry.
Okay, cheers, guys.
Well, we're going to be
good to hear from you, Nick.
We're going to be going all night, Nick. So if you want to pop on at any time, just let us know. All right. Well, it's good to hear from Nick again. Unexpected.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's very good to hear from Nick. Yeah.
Nick, who we can't really go into Nick who, but Nick is a very good friend of ours. But he's very much a sort of in the shadows figure. Does a lot of work in high level circles. We'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I'm surprised he came on, and I'm grateful to him. It's good to hear from
him. Absolutely. So I'll let you just babble on for a minute. I'm just finishing up my my toast for the morning.
Yeah, no problem.
Because we're gonna be going for a while.
Yeah, it's gonna
just kind of woke up.
Gonna be a long night. Make sure to shill it on Twitter and on I'll do that again. But yeah, so it was kind of expected. I'll be interested to see what the Colonel's vote share was. But about yeah, it looks like it's going to be between the shitlib and yeah, I'll probably write him an email tomorrow in the next couple of days. But unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to be stuck with Alex Easton or a shitlib Alliance Party MP. That's going to be fucking great to suffer, to be honest. But no, I don't want to click that. That was the wrong screen. So that's just here personally. Now, across the nation, it doesn't look like we've got any other results at the moment, but we have two Labour holds, but with the Reform Party in opposition to both of them in both chances. So pretty good results, and that's what I'm expecting probably a lot of the night will be across a lot of these seats in the north of England, down that sort of East Midlands way. So, as myself and Nick have been saying, this is very good territory to build up for 2029. This is going to be a very weak Labour. A lot of these seats are going to be very marginal. So it's going to be very weak Labour majority, which is fertile ground, like especially, it's one thing having like the shitlib conservatives in power, because, that kind of diffuses the right wing vote, even from the soft right wingers to the more hardline. But, now that it's the Labour Party in power, it's where whenever the Tories...
Well, it's exactly what Nick was saying, to be honest. He was talking about how pretty much you've had a Labour-like government, for the last decade and a bit. And the thing is as you said, this sort of siphons away I guess I'll talk about it later on as the night goes on, but this is actually to be expected. Something like Reform Party is not really to be expected in a so-called, quote, healthy democracy, closed quote, because what something like the Reform Party should be is a corrective, a party that's for correcting the issues that are being seen as very important to the populace.
Yeah.
Right. And whereas they just don't listen anymore. Any kind of questioning of orthodoxy and dogma now is seen as an attack upon the sort of body politic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely something different.
I have to say, like whenever the election was first called, and like I was genuinely blackpilled. I was in the very despairing territory because you had Nigel saying he wasn't going to stand, and Richard Tice, who we'll get onto our own spiel in time, is just like a woeful party leader. He's okay, like maybe he should run the finances for the Reform Party, but he should be nowhere near like a policy candidate selection kind of level. But like the Reform campaign was just dead on arrival, and the Tories were just dead on arrival, and the Labour campaign is just like, you know, default, we're on to victory, don't screw it up kind of things. And I was like, there's no political solution here. But then Nigel came back and like really reformed it and like spruced up the campaign, because before Nigel probably came back and threw some life into the campaign, is I was sitting here thinking like, Christ, France is on course to put Marine Le Pen in, Barbella and the National Rally into potentially a majority in the National Assembly. Maloney, you know, we've all got our problems with Maloney, but you know, she's in national government. Geert Wilders his party is the biggest governing party in the Netherlands. You have Vox rising in Spain. You have Alternative for Deutschland storming across Germany, especially East Germany. You have this rise of the right across Europe, and then Britain was just absent from this. There was nothing. You had this anemic Reform Party that was just kind of limping along in life support till Nigel decided to come back and, you know, inject some adrenaline into it, or you just had this dead on arrival Conservative Party. And now it seems that thanks largely down to Nigel, and believe me, we'll get into it as the night goes on. There are things that we disagree with Nigel on. There is stuff that we'd prefer he'd not say, things he could be stronger on. But in terms of where we were before he probably came back, it's like, it was just kind of bleak. There was nothing in the UK. There was no proper right-wing nationalist populist outlet. There was just like Conservatives, Richard Tice, and that was it. And now it seems that, frankly, largely just down to Nigel's personal like cult of personality and charisma, he's like dragged the UK into this wider trajectory that all of Western Europe is going along, of this new energetic populist. Yeah, it's more populist than it is nationalist, but you know, a sort of viable right-wing alternative to the conservative centre-right that we have at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, but I guess the question is Nigel becoming a somewhat because he has been for the last couple of you know, depending on whether it was the European elections that your friend Carl was involved in, but for a long time now, he's been somewhat of a cult of personality, a kind of Donald Trump of the UK for American viewers, I would.
Yes and no. See, Trump is a very unique figure. He doesn't really try. Like Nigel. He in this election, he's definitely adopted like these rallies he's doing that's been smashing it out the park. Like having 5,000 people turn up to buy a ticket to go to a political rally is like unheard of in this country, especially with 2 days notice. And Nigel's done that. That's Trumpian. That's where Nigel's learned from Trump. Like Nigel was kind of like, I don't want to say Trump before Trump. It's hard to, like, they're two allies, but they like Nigel had this sort of like middle class bit of the lad swagger to him. Like, you know, the guy who goes down the pub, he's in home counties, comes from Kent, likes a bit of a drink, but he understands the issues. He understands what, like, he might not be white van man, but he'd certainly give white van man a job, and he knows like what white van man thinks politically. Kind of a white van man, for people who are not aware, it's like the British term for like a blue collar worker. But I'm just looking at there's another projection. You happen to mention Carl of Swindon. We actually have is this no, this is well, I just seen one saying Swindon South is going to be a Labour gain by Robert Buckland. Tory MP is going to be out, so there you go. Smuckles, Carl of Swindon has his first seat declared. Is this, or I'm just trying to look at this because it's not showing up on the BBC thing. Is this the one up in Sunderland, or is this actually the Swindon seat that's showing up there? But Swindon is going to be like one of these kind of areas. It's actually, oh no, yeah, we got a third one. Third seat declaration in Sunderland Central. This is another massive result. 50. So Sunderland Central just declared 55,000 votes for Labour. That's a 46% vote share. That's fairly respectable. But the big kicker is 33,000 votes for the Reform Party with a 27%, like, coming from nowhere. Completely leapfrogged the Tories at 17,000 and only 14% of the vote share. Like, this is probably, there is a trend developing here. And it is that the Reform Party is like the only viable opposition to Labour in at least this part of Northumbria, just going by these free seats declared so far. And I expect this will be the same story going all the way down into Yorkshire, your sort of Harrogates, your Doncasters, sort of places. Probably this will be the same story that'll go over into Lancashire. So I wouldn't actually be surprised if some of these seats, if Reform actually manages to take some of these seats, some of these 13 that they're projected to take.
Well, the thing is about Reform is, I think Nick kind of, I would say he probably best summarized it, is that they are pretty much offering a platform that's not Labour light, which has been what the Conservatives have been for the entirety of their tenure in government. And this is why they're just being smashed, because they don't really provide any sort of a. I would just, I'm not British, but I would say what they don't provide is they don't provide any sort of uniform or any kind of alternative to Labour, and actually that's built into the pudding of the political system. I mean, that's pretty much what is. I mean, if you take a look at any of these parties, I mean, they all fairly are all within the sort of parameters of the system. Whereas Reform, if you give it a little bit of time, they could do something. And as you were talking about what's happening, the things that are happening on continental Europe, whether it be France, whether it be Germany, whether it be Spain, it's happening across, as the Netherlands with Geert Wilders. It's happening in all of these countries. It's something that you and I have talked about previously, I guess just privately, on the fact that it seems that there's something innately different in Anglo countries than there is in continental Europe, because they seem to be able to get their shite together a lot better than Anglo societies can. There's something sort of, I don't know, in the water in Anglo societies.
Well, like I say,
much easier.
I'd have agreed up until about a month ago, until Nigel just seemed to like materialize out of nowhere and just just built this entire movement off the back of it. Like it can't be understated. Like, 33,000 votes in Sunderland. That it wasn't Richard Tice who did that. That was Nigel. Like, yeah, there's a problem that there's so much just built onto the personality of one man. This is why I'm hoping they'll professionalize the party, build up the infrastructure. But but the fact that he can, in the space of about a month, like make one party the opposition to Labour in the north, it's. I don't know, maybe a bit of great man theory of history here, but like if Nigel wasn't in this campaign, like it would just be desperate. It'd be, the only battle that would be going on would be the Tories and Labour, and as you just elucidated, like the Tories are just Labour running at the speed, Labour but at the speed limit. They're just progressives but driving at the speed limit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they'll end up wherever Labour brings them, just a few years behind.
Yeah.
You got Labour for the next 5 years, for example. I mean, the Tories will find them at the end of the racetrack, at the end of the road.
Yeah.
Just a little slow, but as you said, at the speed limit.
Well, as Nick was saying, Penny Mordaunt is projected to be a leadership contender, and yet this is like. I can remember everyone like, oh, based Penny's going to lead the Conservative Party and make, the next Margaret Thatcher. And it's like Penny Mordaunt can't define her own gender. she's fully on board with like the whole transgender stuff. Like this, and you wonder why the party is in the state it is. And then you've got all these like wet Tories who have left the party, Anna Soubry types, your David Gauks and stuff, who have been effectively evicted from the party because they're basically Lib Dems or Labour Party members at this stage, and they're saying that the Conservative Party is too far right. They say the Labour Party, the Conservative, you know, it's like the, if you watch the BBC, if you watch broadcast media in this country, that's the dichotomy, is that the Conservatives are like this horrible far right mutant party. And then you've got the Reform, which is like this ultra-fascist party that's trying to push up, and you know, that's the dichotomy of the country.
Well,
and it's like
the concentration camps aren't far behind. It's basically the way they portray Trump in the United States.
Yeah. So just an interesting one. It looks like projected that George Galloway of the Workers' Party is not going to hold Rochdale. That is a surprise to me because I thought he would have held that seat.
That's a huge surprise. Have the Muslims in Rochdale, have they fielded their own candidate in Labour?
Yeah, I think what's probably happened there, because he was elected at the by-election, and by-elections, you know, always have a lower turnout. I think what's probably happened here is, because it's a general election, a lot more people turn out, and you've probably got a lot more of those sort of like old white suburb voters are coming out and probably voting for Labour, whereas during the by-election they didn't, and that's probably what's done him in. So I'll have to keep an eye there, but that is a surprise because I thought, because he seemed to have been running quite an effective campaign up there, and if he loses that seat, that could be the Workers' Party pretty much dead on arrival.
All right, so I should say that I'm going to have to get off this stream right now. I think we agreed that you wanted to move it over to mine, but the one thing is we can do is you can actually run it off of your channel as well. So people can either come and join it at my channel, or they can stay on your channel. I'll give you a link. It starts in 15 minutes. I've just got to go get myself,
Okay, I'll run this up. Like I say, we'll do mine. Mine will be like the pre-stream. We'll run this up. Then whenever you start up, I'll jump over onto yours because I'm pretty sure you're better at running the screen than me because my OBS is like a minimized screen. So we'll just jump over to yours then. So I'll run it up for another 15 minutes and direct everyone over onto you. So just send us the links whenever you want.
Right. Sounds good, buddy. We'll talk soon. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Hope you can make it over to the stream on my channel. Starts in about 13 minutes. So see you then, guys. Bye.
Rightio. So yeah, that's kind of how we're going to swing it. Mine's like sort of the pre-stream. Then we'll jump over to Felix as we start to go in through the evening. So what have I just got now? I'm going to see about getting another guest in. So I'm going to get another guy on the stream at the moment. Get him to join the chat and we'll round it out with him. So just as he sorts himself, just see if we have any other declarations coming in. Still just the free.
I can tell you now, I'll summarise the response to that exit poll. A loud groan when we heard the words Labour landslide. I can tell you what, when we got to the Reform, the 13 seats for Reform, I heard a massive cheer. Now, what I'll do is I'll throw it open to the room, en masse, tell me everybody, and then Patrick will go to individual people for a response. How do you feel? Who is happy about that Labour landslide tonight? Strong feelings there. What do you think to the Tory situation then? 131 seats. That's a loss of 245 seats, if that is to be believed. He says not enough. I can tell you now, I'm hearing shouts of not enough. I'm hearing shouts of serves them right. Okay, and I do have to ask, what about reform then? So now apparently...
So this is the GB News election party. Of course, GB News is pretty much like the Reform Party TV show. It's what it's kind of the bread and butter. People who watch GB News are very much going to be your sort of bread and butter reform voters. Kind of at one point might have been your sort of Tory, but the Tories completely screwed it up. So like it should be said, like the Labour Party is going to win a massive majority in Parliament, but it's not a popular party. It's just because of the Conservative Party collapse benefits Labour to such an extent that it will give them that majority. It's not because like everyone suddenly become massive fans of the Labour Party. So it's exciting times, guys, exciting times. So hopefully this guy is going to be able to jump in. And with him, we'll round out this stream until we jump over to Felix's stream. Wood Smash. Yeah, I have to say, Michelle Dewsbury she is a nice little bit of Tory talk. Well, not Tory, but especially whenever she wears those cat ears.
13 seats. I can tell you, Paddington and everyone else at home, the energy.
So let's just see the latest shit show that is going to be my constituency.
Your campaign, you seem to be cutting through, you seem to be certainly on social media doing very well. There were some people tipping you. What has gone wrong?
I've no idea. People in North Down, I think they don't want somebody that doesn't live in Northern Ireland. They want a homegrown boy. They're interested in local politics. They're not interested in cutting VAT. They're not interested in international affairs. They're interested in potholes and hedges.
Would you try again?
No.
In Mr. Ryan, would you try again?
No.
I can't say, was that a yes or no? So this is my candidate. This is the guy that I was supporting, Colonel Tim Collins. Like genuinely like the most qualified guy. But we'll speak. If you're in the call, speak. Unmute and speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Right, so this is Jack Hadfield of, what are you working for now?
The Publica.
The Publica? Sounds gay. Yep. What's the Publica?
Just a news, form, culture site, all that kind of good stuff.
Okay, well, this is my friend Jack, Autistic Jack, works for the Publica. How are you, Jack? You're a little bit quiet. Are you able to speak a bit closer into the microphone, or?
Yeah, I'm running through headphones, otherwise there'd be a huge amount of background noise. There's having an election bash at my place right now.
Okay, fair enough. So, I know you've been doing a lot of reporting on or following of the Workers' Party. What's your take on what's happening with them? Because it looks like Galloway isn't going to hold his seat.
Well, that is the MRP poll. I can't say things I've heard. I'm hearing things, but the MRP poll in Rochdale, I don't think it really counted Galloway stuff. It was looking at like the national exit poll things. So Rochdale is a completely different kettle of fish. So I think we really got to wait for the actual votes to come out to see what's actually happened there. So I wouldn't necessarily trust the exit poll, just because I think with the Workers' Party and Reform in general, especially when you've got like really close three-way races, the exit poll is going to be wrong. So I don't even think that Reform's going to get 13 seats. I think you could see 17 to 20 perhaps. Tories down, probably below 130. There's going to be so much so that so much stuff that the exit poll just cannot predict, because I believe the only did 120 seats in total in the country. So yeah, there's a lot that election night is going to be bearing out. And really, I know it's quite cliche, but it really is going to be a long night.
Yeah. Okay. So Yeah, I didn't consider that fact. If it was on the national, I didn't, because I do know that they said that they tried to do a lot of individual polls. It'd be interesting because if Galloway loses his seat, I would imagine that would probably be the death of the Workers' Party there and then. Although it does seem to have put in a good inning, but it does seem to be like, because you turned up to their meetings, I think you once said, like the impression I've gotten from seeing the Workers' Party is it's effectively the Muslim party. There's some like white tankies a part of it.
Okay, so that's really, I can certainly say that really isn't the case. It really is a lot more, at least 50-50 split between sort of like Muslim and white people. As I said, I went to the manifesto launch in Manchester. I know, sort of people on their team. I reported on the Hope Not Hate stuff. I broke that, the first thing going on with Rochdale, with the undercover team there. And I've spoken to a lot of them, and it really is not just the Muslim Party. I think Galloway, he posted like a week or so ago, like he found like one ward that was like breaking like 50% for reform, and also like he's also seems to have like decent support from the white working class as well. From what he's been saying previously. So it's a lot of kind of epic handshake moments going on in Rochdale, and really we'll just kind of see whether that bears it out tonight, or whether Labour have clinched it, or or like maybe they even split the vote between Labour and Reform takes it. There could be some really interesting outcomes. So yeah, but it's certainly not just the Muslim Third World Party, 100%.
Okay, but it does seem that the common theme, like that unites anyone in that party, is very much the Gaza issue.
I think Gaza, Israel, a lot of like sort of anti-woke stuff as well, I suppose. You sort of got, I mean, George specifically said, multiple times he's against mass and illegal immigration, wants to put the Royal Navy in the Channel. So, it really is this very interesting coalition of sort of, of the Islamic Gaza vote, and a lot of people who, maybe would be voting reform, but would lend their vote to Galloway and Rochdale.
Okay, so would it be right to say that a lot of these people are reform voters, but they're like, is it just the case that the Reform Party isn't standing there, or is it just because local issues mean like they're more minded to back the Workers' Party, or?
Well, I mean, Reform is standing there, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. As I said, I know the Galloway campaign has put out a lot of, sort of pro like anti-immigration stuff on leaflets. So seeing that, he could certainly pick up some support from there. But as I said, I think we really will need to check the polls and also see the quote unquote big data, afterwards, to actually look at all the actual like class and ethnic breakdowns and previous voter breakdowns from Rochdale, until we really have a full understanding of what's actually been going on the ground.
Okay. Oh, we just got another big result. Again, this is up in Newcastle and Tyne, Washington and Gateshead. This looks like a very big constituency. Labour, 47% of the vote, 95,000 votes, but the Reform Party with 50,000 votes, basically 25% of the vote, and then the Tories down with 34,000 at 16% of the vote. So that's the fourth seat in a row. But again, this is all up here in that Newcastle and Tyneside area, where the Reform Party is running a very credible opposition to Labour, and where the Tories have just been relegated completely down to third place. Although saying that, that's a fairly decent turnout for the Green Party there. Never mind. I'm reading the actual overall vote. A bit of a retard there. Why isn't it showing up constituencies? But, so what's happening at your place, Jack? Who's all there? Anyone I know? Anyone cool?
I think I think at least one person you might know, but not going to necessarily. I'll give you the full rundown. The DMs. But yeah, some good people enjoying reform coming second, enjoying the Labour swings to reform. Obviously, the seats we've seen so far, and yeah, just really hope. Yeah, we've got some bottles of Master Brew to drink, and Nigel Farage's gin to take shots of, with each of the reform candidates winning in. So I think we're all taking a shot of the gin for when Nigel wins. Touch wood, of course.
I think his declaration's round about half one.
1:30. Okay, so basically within the hour, basically from now. So
yeah, I think it's around about
that'll be quite an early one.
1 o'clock to 2 o'clock is whenever you like a lot of declarations come in thick and fast. So that's whenever I think Clacton is due to come in as well. So yeah, are you coming across next week?
Perhaps I'm just looking to see. Got to get the finances together, but I would love to come up. That would be quite fun, especially if I could do something a little bit of work over there. You know, I'm doing on the ground filming now. That's more of my thing.
Yeah.
We're expanding into video content, so yeah, certainly could be a good shout.
Tell you what, I'm gonna shill your account, shill my account as well, Jack. Shill for shill.
100%.
So posting Jack's X account, he's a little bit autistic, but we like Jack.
We love him.
In the chat. Go give him a follow. He does some good work. If I'm not mistaken, this is something I haven't mentioned. I'll probably mention it on Felix's stream, but you helped break a bit of a story on Hope Not Hate, which, speaking of, they have finished their ban. They were banned because they were doxed a large right-wing Twitter account a couple weeks ago. They've finished their ban, but the engagement on their account is like they've been shadow banned or something. Like the engagement that Hope Not Hate gets on their official account now is like in the dirt compared to what it was.
I mean, that really is great news. That is the biggest W, I think, of this campaign. Certainly the amount of seed that we're going to get from Hope Not Hate. Again, if Galloway wins in Rochdale, and of course, even with 13 reform seats coming over, so that'll be us. Nick Lowles will be crying into his soy latte by tomorrow morning. I'm sure.
So what was the story you broke? Was it about their spying on Galloway?
Yeah, so we had a couple of people go undercover into the Hope Not Hate campaign in Rochdale against Galloway, and we found out that there are only 2 campaigners really with them. Well, of course, Nick Lowell said, we've got 5 teams going out in Rochdale. Blatant lie. There was only literally like 5 of them in total, including Lowell's and including 2 of the undercover operatives who were able to do this recording. And they found that these people, one of them was actually on the Paul War Labour team themselves, and so there's all these links to Labour, and there was other ones which Guido Fawkes broke, which I had some other audio recordings, which I was looking into publishing myself, just checking them with legal facts beforehand, looking into perhaps potential overspending via Hope Not Hate against a thing there. But yeah, basically I broke that. Really, the Hope Not Hate was really running this shadow campaign for Labour, and we kind of had the audio recordings to at least have some pretty firm stance to suggest that.
So I mean, I'm just looking at the engagement on their tweets before their ban. Like here's just a random one, 56k. That one didn't do too well, but then there's 30k, 150k, basically 500,000 impressions. There's one from Nick Lowell's, another 500,000 impressions. 135k, and then they get banned. They come back. Their tweets since July 1st, like 3,500, 6,000.
Wow.
That one actually did quite. No, that one. No, that's 457 impressions. 11,000 impressions.
Thank you, X algorithm.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that's come out of the election, the fact that these dickheads have just been like suppressed completely out of public discourse is good enough for me.
Yeah, it's really the big epic handshake with Galloway and me. Working together to absolutely screw over Hope Not Hate. So this would be the most satisfying part of this election campaign for me personally.
Yeah. So what's your projections for the rest of the night as it goes on?
Well, I think what we're going to really see is we're going to see perhaps Labour remaining the same amount of seats, but I really think the Tory seat numbers from the exit poll are going down and Reform's going up. That's my thing. I think we're going to get closer to at least 10, maybe more 20 seats for Reform than are predicted, with a lot of three-way ties going on a knife edge.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're going to see. Whereas, with the Conservatives, 131 seats, far too high. I simply do not believe that exit poll. We are getting close to 100. Potentially Labour making more as Reform split over. So I think the Lib Dem vote seat count as it stands is probably pretty solid. And again, probably with the SNP as well. But I think the Tory and Reform numbers are going to change quite dramatically.
Okay, fair enough. So what do you think is the future of the Conservative Party after this? I mean, in terms of leadership, and where do you think, do you think the Reform Party is just going to eclipse them, potentially merge with them? Because as I was saying, I'm pretty sure you probably didn't hear whenever we had Nick on, who works at pretty high levels with the Conservatives and Reform. He was telling us that this is probably the best electoral landscape that we can have for a proper right-wing opposition to emerge, like a proper Reform takeover Canada style.
Yeah, well, here's your future: vote Tory, get Labour.
Yeah,
we're seeing this with the seats already. Especially I think with Sunderland, Reform on 10,000, Tories on 5,000, and Labour on 16. So that's the future. It's vote Tory, get Labour. This is the election of the switch. The Tories, because they're run by complete retards, they're going to think, we ran a populist right campaign and everybody hated us, so we've got to be centrist libs now. It's like, no, you won 2019, a massive historic majority on a populist right campaign. You completely squandered it by not doing any of the things that people actually wanted from it, and you basically run on a lib campaign now. But they're going to basically swing. They're going to swing to the centre, 100%. If with the people who control it, CCHQ is not going to let anybody decent take charge. Anybody decent still left in the Conservatives, in that rump Conservative Party, which switches to the most centrist liberal nonsense, they will 100% then defect to Reform if that happens. I think the ones who are still remaining in Parliament, if there are any of them later on. So Reform is going to become the right-wing party come 2029. The Conservatives are going to drop even further. They're going to back Reform because, as I said, it's vote Tory, get Labour.
Yeah, very much so. I'd be pretty much in agreement. Right. I guess I'll probably let you jump off and get drunk with your friends.
Fantastic. Well, great to see you.
Have a good one, Jack, and don't get too drunk.
Okay. All right. Ta-ra.
Bye. Oh, no, I don't want to leave. So, Tim Collins managed to get dressed on ballot paper. Oh, great. It's nice to know that he's running about causing havoc. So Nigel is predicting that Reform is going to win 6 million votes. 6 million. Now, that number seems a bit high for me, chat. 6 million votes? Oh, I don't know. Could you really get 6 million votes in 5 years? It seems a bit much for me. So, have we got any other results? So this is the first one that's come from outside of that Northumberland area. So this is Swindon South. First Labour gain of the evening from the Tories. Complete collapse of the Tory vote, down an entire quarter, 24%. Labour majority of just about 9,000 there. Fairly healthy majority there, but there you go. Reform coming in with 13% of the vote, 14% of the vote at 6,000. That's a fairly healthy showing. This wouldn't be the most natural place for Reform to do very well, but this is a fairly respectable showing. And I think this kind of shows the adage that if the Tories ever want to win again, they need to do something with Reform. They need to accommodate Reform and Reform voters, because there's no way that Robert Buckland or a Conservative candidate could ever retake this constituency without Reform passing their votes to him. So that will probably be the story of the show through a number of these seats in the South. So that's Swindon South. I say we had another one up here in Washington and Gateshead, which the same again. Reform, the only real opposition to Labour up here. Fairly, very, very good. Very good showing there. So I'll just pop. Oh. So I think Felix has started his stream. So this is the link to Felix's chat. I'm going to be shutting down this chat now, guys, and heading over to Felix. So do join us over there, and I will see you there. So thank you for coming along, and I will see you guys over on Felix's chat. Have a good one, chat, and see you there.